Welcome to Confessions of a Terrible Leader, where real leaders share the raw truth about the lessons they learned the hard way so you don't have to. Join our host, Layci Nelson, founder of Transcend Leadership Collective and former terrible leader. On this podcast, we invite you to step into the confessional and get real with the messy stories and behind-the-scenes reality of leadership. Let's get to it. Hello, friends, and welcome back to Confessions of a Terrible Leader. I'm your friendly neighborhood podcast producer, Mary Skop, back here today with our founder and CEO, Layci Nelson of Transcend Leadership Collective. Layci, welcome back.
Yes. We haven't done one of these all summer. In all transparency, we took the summer off
Pretty much.
of Q&As for the most part.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm getting back on the bike. I know how to do this, but it's a little wobbly. Yeah,
Yes.
Welcome to the ride, everyone.
Oh, man. Absolutely. It does feel like that. We were talking like, do we still know how to do this?
Right.
It was a good and necessary break. It's been a very, how shall we say that? We're now calling it the summer in which nothing went to plan.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But that's okay because we're here now. And as of today, all of our kids are back in school. The brain power is slowly returning and we are going to find our way back to normal.
Yes, we are. Yes,
So,
we are.
Layci, I was looking up what are some of the red hot leadership issues of 2025. It's no surprise to me that the first one that pops up is AI, but that's a really massive topic.
Yeah.
And we're not going to tackle that today.
Not today.
Not today, but probably in another Q&A.
Absolutely.
What we are going to talk about today is right now, there is a mounting CEO succession crisis and leadership pipeline erosion. That's a mouthful.
Yep.
That's a little scary. And the gist of it is there's a disconnect. There's a lack of preparation of up and coming leaders. And I'm going to cite my sources here from Business Insider. I just want to read this short statistic here that right now there's a record executive turnover and very thin pipelines. In early 2025, 14.8% of S&P 500 companies saw their CEOs exit. And that is a rate far above the historical average of 11.3%.
Yeah.
That is 646 CEOs stepping down in a single quarter.
Right. Of Fortune 500s.
Right.
That's not even of everybody.
Right. Literally Fortune 500. And that should really make us pause. But wait, kids, it gets worse. Meanwhile, internal leadership pipelines are increasingly fragile as structural changes and job hopping by emerging talent leave companies scrambling for qualified successors. And as a result, 44% of new CEOs in 2024 were poached externally. Layci, help.
Yes.
What's going on?
I mean, the 44 poached externally, people may think, well, what's the problem with that? They're finding them. They're getting people in the seats. I want us all to recognize that, first of all, how long it takes to get someone up to speed that comes in from the outside with the culture, with understanding how things work, developing all of the relationships that are required to function at that high level. If you have a board you're reporting to, there's also that relationship and trust building that has to happen that takes time. And when you are bringing somebody in from the outside, you're losing years of historical knowledge, of understanding how things function, of knowing where the gaps are. That's all gone when you bring somebody new in, no matter how talented they are. There is a steep learning curve and you lose a lot of continuity. And it's not unusual when you bring someone in from the outside, existing talent that may report to that new boss, you usually lose somebody in that transition period as well. It's not uncommon. New leader comes in, there's somebody on the executive team that just does not work well with that new leader for a myriad of reasons, and you lose them. And that's more historical institutional knowledge that just walked out your door.
Yeah.
There is a lot to be said for putting in the work of developing your successor internally and identifying successors internally, but understanding it doesn't just organically, magically happen as much as we want it to.
Yes, that would be nice, but
Wouldn't
it doesn't.
though? But it doesn't. And I think the crisis, the erosion that they talk about is a lot of people think, oh, I know who the next person's going to be, but they sometimes don't even have a conversation with that person. They operate off of assumption, or they wait way too long to have the conversation. So that person is out because they're like, I'm going to look for opportunities somewhere else.
Right.
And they had no idea they were being eyed for succession.
Yeah.
And by the time that they've moved on to another company, even if you tell them when they're going to walk out the door, oftentimes they've already made that emotional and mental disconnect and they're moving on.
Yeah.
They're done.
Mm-hmm.
You got to catch them way before that.
Yeah.
The problem, besides just lack of communication, is no formal, intense leadership development. No obvious pathways either. We work with a lot of organizations that are operating at the 9+ figures. So these are not a mom and pop down the street.
Mm-hmm.
They might have started that way, which is cool. But these really large organizations, they have not put in the work to identify even a rubric for what do we look for in leaders here? What are we looking for in the next group of leaders that we want to bring up? And have we communicated it to them? Is there an obvious on-ramp and pathway to development so that people can know, I want X and this is how I get there. And this is what it takes to get there. I want to be in this seat of leadership. This is the pathway. So often we either never thought through the pathway or we haven't effectively communicated the pathway.
Yeah.
That is what we're seeing all over the place. I would say 1,000,000% echoes at multiple levels of business, not just the Fortune 500s. It's happening at all levels of business.
Yeah. And that's so sad to think about. There could be so many young, capable leaders in these companies, well, in any company, where perhaps they were being considered for leadership, but because of, again, that weak pipeline, lack of communication, lack of a rubric or protocol, they had no idea that they were being considered or at least being viewed as a possibility. So eventually they leave because a better opportunity elsewhere awaits them. And if that could have just been communicated, you strengthen the pipeline, happier workers, better succession and continuity.
Right.
Yeah.
People that do participate in established leadership pipelines, leadership trainings in organizations where it's functioning well, it's pride. There's like a big amount of pride to be selected to be part of this leadership training process when it is obvious that it's leading somewhere, that this actually is an on-ramp to possibility for you, not just an exercise in futility of a box to check where we send you away to this thing or we have this speaker come in. When it's disconnected from a higher purpose, it's not nearly as powerful.
Yeah.
When you can actually say, this is our leadership program, and the very best ones start identifying people on the front line. Your development of people, the front line are not an afterthought. They are part of your intentionality of seeking people out.
Yeah.
And some of the most amazing leaders that take companies to new heights are the ones that started on the front line and then they're sitting in the boardroom in those executive C-suite chairs, making decisions with this depth of knowledge and historical understanding of the life of the institution that spans like 15 to 20 years by the time they're in those seats.
Yeah.
You're not going to get that with somebody coming in from the outside.
Right.
It's going to take 15 years to get there. You don't have 15 years for them to catch up. To be able to maintain the continuity of the company, of the success, to be able to cast vision as to where we need to go next.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And to have that experience and depth of knowledge, I've experienced this in other workplaces where you have new people coming in all the time. There's no knowledge base of protocol, how things are done. And it's just a constant starting over.
Yes,
and that is
exhausting.
It's exhausting. It's frustrating. And of course, turnover is insanely high in situations like that. So what you're speaking to leads me directly to the next point of, as you said, the growing leadership gap. Recognizing there is a systemic failure to nurture future leaders. Leaving things to chance. And another statistic that I wanted to read was that boards are now under pressure to identify visionary leaders quickly or risk decisions that lack continuity and fail to preserve organizational culture. Whoa. Would you speak to that a bit more, Layci?
Yes. Oftentimes, those that we have identified without the intentionality of a process in place and just like, well, they're really good at the job. The strongest skill set those people have, the muscle that is the strongest, is that muscle of operator, maintenance, keeping the train on the tracks, keeping the trains running on time. All hyper valuable skills, absolutely necessary for the functioning of an organization. However, it is a completely different muscle than vision casting and a completely different embrace of even the way that they communicate and share what's going on, the tone. In strong operators, there's often a like, well, change is necessary. We got to figure this out. There's not an embracing of it as this is exciting. It's like, we have to tolerate it. It comes with the territory.
Yeah.
Strong operators are amazing. We need them. And we need to recognize at the same time that that is not the same skill as vision casting. The strongest vision casters are able to inspire operators to then carry it out and do that work. But often we're not helping people understand even what it takes to cast vision, to bring that fire and see what's coming next. It's a muscle and you can develop it. And operators can develop it as well. Now you're going to have one way you lean harder than the other, but it also may make you pause and go, have I identified the right person? Because I am thinking this super strong operator is going to be my successor, but can they carry the vision? Can they motivate, engage, and inspire at that top level? The answer to that might be no.
Yeah.
And you might have that person. You just have been looking in the wrong place.
Sure. That makes sense. That would be very tricky. A strong operator, like you said, so necessary. We need operators to keep things on the rails and keep moving forward. And so often it could be considered really inconvenient to think of having to kind of split this idea of operator visionary because we just love everything in one, and all in one.
Right.
And humans with all of their brilliant skill sets, we can't do it all. And that's just not always what you get.
It is the rare unicorn. Everyone thinks they're a unicorn. I'm not a unicorn. Ask my team. So like a strong visionary, I need people that bring structure and keep the trains running on time. Operator and visionaries should be holding hands all the time. If you thrust an operator into a visionary position and then all of a sudden expect them to be a visionary, but you haven't effectively communicated even what it means, let's talk about what it means to be a visionary. I think sometimes we use that word and we're like, I don't think that word means what you think it means.
Right. So. Yes. Yeah. Let's go there.
A visionary is the person that sees where the company, the organization, the services, the core, the heartbeat, they hold the heart of the culture. They own the essence of who are we and where are we going? And why do we exist? And why do we do what we do in this world? Not so much in the how.
Sure.
The nuts and bolts of execution is what operators excel at. But those visionaries are really good at saying, this is why we do what we do. This is why it matters. And they get others engaged and excited to be part of this thing that is bigger than themselves. And they can see the future and they have a high risk tolerance. It's one of the biggest differentiators. Operators typically have a much lower risk tolerance. By risk tolerance, I mean a visionary can say, this could be a really expensive mistake.
Right.
But we're going to go for it and see what happens. You need to do it with wisdom.
Right.
Not they're willing. It's not recklessness, but it's a willingness to try things.
Yeah.
It also is an ability to develop and nurture big key relationships. Visionaries are going out and bringing others in as customers, as collaborators. They're sitting around the tables. They're oftentimes doing a lot of the things that feel like to a lot of people from the outside, like, well, that must be nice. But they're going to the networkings. They're going to the parties. And I'm going to tell you, after a certain amount, the gloriousness of that wears off real quick. So
I'm sure. Sounds like a nightmare to me.
But you do it, man. You go out there and you do it and you stay engaged and, it's like working out. Once you're there, it's great. Just getting yourself there sometimes can be like, oh, here we go again,
Right. Sure.
That is where visionaries just thrive, right? They dazzle in that area and it can be taught. Some of it is innate in how you see the world.
Yeah.
But there are things to look for in your potential successors. And I just want to encourage, oftentimes it's not the super strong operators. You're going to ask them to go into that role and they are going to struggle because all of a sudden everything they did that helped them win as an operator is not what's going to help them win as the person who carries the vision and the culture of the company.
Sure. Very different skill set.
Yep. And also, a visionary has to be able to confidently stand in front of their team and say, this is where we're going. I don't know exactly how we're going to get there.
Right.
You're going to help me figure that out together. But this is the journey that we're going to be on. And this is the direction. This is the destination, and cast that beautiful picture for them. For us, we want to influence 25% of the most influential businesses in America. We want them to be using heart first leadership skills.
Yeah.
That's
the vision.
That's the vision. We really want this out there because we so believe in the impact it makes. Why? Because everyone deserves the opportunity to go to work and be motivated, engaged, and inspired. And we focus on how does this affect the least influential, because everyone matters. And if we start with the front line and thinking about, even though oftentimes we're working with the mid-level and above, we keep in mind everything we design, everything we do, how is this impacting the front line? And then also encourage everyone that we're working with. We don't just encourage, we lay it out.
Yeah.
We go in and we design leadership academies for organizations so they can do all these things we're talking about.
Right.
We include the frontline in that development.
Yep.
They are included in the arc of how do we get this throughout the company. A lot of times leadership development gets trapped in the top and it's only given to the top.
Right. And that makes zero sense.
Right. And then they're expected to go share what you learned with your team. That's not a fair ask of them.
No.
It's not like they failed. It's like, that's not a fair ask. First of
Right.
all, top tier facilitation and trainers are a skill in and of themselves.
Yeah.
We have some of the best. So
I think so.
Yes.
Absolutely.
all of that to say, that is the essence of vision casting.
Yeah.
When you understand that's what you're looking for in your successor, you're going to have a different lens with which you are understanding conversations that happen, the things that you're picking up on in those that are surrounding you, that are your right hand, your left hand, those executives on your team, the people that you think might be next. When you can understand what vision casting actually is, and then the ability to take it and communicate it in a way that is not chaotic.
Yes.
That doesn't overwhelm. There's a lot of nuances to being that kind of a leader because we overwhelm our people if we're not careful, if we're not skilled. That's probably a different discussion.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is what you're looking for in your potential successor. And that is what the boards are talking about, that they want. If you think of the leaders that have come back into a company, if you look at Apple, you look at Starbucks, who did they have to bring back in? Their strongest vision casters.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. And as you're saying that, it just reminds me when I was researching, reading through all of this, what struck me the most is how all of these very real problems, this is a crisis right now in leadership.
Yeah.
It can be discouraging on one way of looking at it, but recognizing how much Transcend does to help with that. And help isn't even the right word. This is the mission. This is the vision. Recognizing the crisis and recognizing everything we do right now is deeply aligned with addressing this crisis.
1,000,000%. Yes.
And I know I've mentioned this before, but when we do these Q&As, we are looking at very current research. So we can bring that research to you, dear listener and viewer. It's a very real problem, but I was glad to see, wow, everything that we're doing in our work right now is completely aligned with helping to be part of the solution to this crisis.
Yes. All of our core services work towards that.
Yes.
And we don't talk about it as loudly as we should. We also actually do succession planning.
Yes.
And when people think about succession planning, they often think about contracts and lawyers and fiscal agreements, which are all critical.
Sure. It's certainly part of it.
It is very much an important part of it. What often gets, I will say at the extreme, completely ignored, and at best, usually not given enough attention, is surfacing and smoking out all of the underlying sacred cows, elephants in the room, the hard things that are getting in the way of having open, honest heart. Honest and healthy conflict, and really having those conflicts and those conversations that are uncomfortable dealt with so that you can actually come up with contracts and financial agreements that aren't blanketed in resentment and have to be rewritten 5 times and end up in a nightmare later.
Right.
It's helping people understand how to be stubborn about the right things.
Yes.
And get all those issues out so that you can actually develop a plan that is going to be adhered to because everyone's bought in.
Yep.
Because they helped create it and it worked through some issues that sometimes for generations have not been worked through, especially in family business.
I was just about to say, especially in family businesses, and we do a lot of work with agriculture. There can be some heavy stuff there to work through. And the whole idea of succession is that things are able to keep going. The business is able to keep thriving, or maybe even thrive for truly the first time.
Right.
We help work through, well, what's the stuff that's keeping you from getting there?
Right. Yep.
Whoa, there's a lot. Good stuff. That's something that we could talk about forever is succession planning, and where the crisis right now with the CEOs and the weakness of the pipeline, all those things. And we'll keep an eye on what the trends are looking like with that. And I'm sure we'll revisit this topic from time to time. But Layci, is there anything else you'd like to add to this already quite robust
I know we were supposed to be short. I think something that could be a really good deep dive, we don't have time this episode, but a deep dive for future episodes. Listeners, let us know if you like this. What are the top 3 to 5 things about succession that people get wrong?
Oh, that's great.
Where do we see it fly off the rails? Maybe we'll do one for our family business because that's its own thing. And then one for businesses that are not family businesses.
Yeah. That sounds great. And I have been actually toying with the idea of we need to poll our listeners and viewers and ask some specific questions about what would be helpful for you to see and discuss. But that's a big one. Okay, we're going to write that down. That's going to be a future episode. We're going to revisit that in the future in greater detail. Awesome. Well, Layci, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being here, for joining me today. And listeners and viewers, thank you for being here. And remember, go manage like a leader. Thanks for listening to Confessions of a Terrible Leader. If you're feeling brave and have your own terrible leader story that you'd like to share, head over to transcendleadershipcollective.com/podcast to fill out a guest application. We'd love to hear from you. Confessions of a Terrible Leader is hosted by Layci Nelson and produced and edited by Fixation Point Productions. Music is by Leif Olson and Mary Skop from the band The Number of Months. Confessions of a Terrible Leader is a free leadership resource offered by Transcend Leadership Collective. If you are ready to refuse the limits of average leadership and join the leadership revolution, visit transcendleadershipcollective.com to check out our offerings for engaging workshops, strategic planning, and more. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave us a review. And until next time, go manage like a leader.